Welcome to Let's Talk Kashrus. We are joined today by Rabbi Avrohom Weinrib, Rav of Congregation Zichron Eliezer of Cincinnati, Ohio, and Rabbinic Administrator of Cincinnati, Kosher. Thank you, Rabbi Weinrib, for joining us.
What a pleasure.
May a kosher consumer eat in a vegan restaurant?
Sounds like a very simple question.
I would think so,
You would think so. What could be wrong?
No dairy.
No dairy, no meat.
No meat. What would be an issue?
Right, what would be an issue? And I think this is a very, very common thought people have.
Especially as I hear vegan restaurants are the new fad, opening up
very
all over, very popular, especially as people are health conscious.
Exactly.
They want to get rid of the meat, they want to get rid of the dairy. Even among kosher consumers, it seems to be very in vogue.
It's in vogue everywhere.
Right.
Everywhere. And the truth is, out of town especially, when you have less certified restaurants, there's a great option. Vegan. And places with have a lot of good options, but you don't have many kosher necessarily vegan options. And even if you do, what could be the issue with them? Why would there be a problem? So I think we have to really start back into the potential issues that we have, and there are many. There are many. I think probably the most simplest one is probably the vegetables, which everyone's familiar that vegetables can have an issue, have to be checked, etc.
Insect infestation.
Insect infestation.
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize, number one, how many different insects there can be, how many different vegetables can have problems with insects, and things which we often just think are probably okay are very likely not okay. And truth is that vegan restaurants, the bulk of what they serve is vegetables. So they're trying to figure out how to make everything from vegetables, and many of them have insect infestation, and maybe they're washed, probably not even that.
So I was going to ask, just so that we don't take anything for granted, aren't there laws with regard to infestation that you have to serve a certain level of cleanliness?
For sure there are laws.
Right.
The laws and halacha are about 1,000,000 miles apart.
Okay.
Right. In other words, you can have.
I want to clarify.
Right.
That.
You can have according to
Someone
the
out there might be wondering.
100%.
Like, why would a store doesn't want to ruin their reputation? I can't imagine that a store would serve me vegetables that are infested.
Right. You're not going to see necessarily things crawling all over your plate.
Right.
Probably not. But as far as the thrips are very, very, very small.
Right.
Very small, especially baby thrips. They're tiny. And you can have, I don't know the numbers exactly, according to FDA, thrips in there, that's fine. If you have a certain amount of number, it's fine. One thrip is 6 lavin deraisa. Right, one. And there can be multiple thrips in any single one. There's aphids, there's thrips, there's flies, and they're all over. And there are so many vegetables that have them, and people just simply don't realize the issue. We had an incident with a vegan restaurant. Someone asked me to do a review on this restaurant. It was under a hashkacha, which will remain nameless. And they weren't sure if the hashkacha was okay. And they said, just do a review on this restaurant, see if we can eat there. So I said, okay, I'm happy to do a review there. I went down there, and it was horrific. It was horrific. And bug issues were not dealt with at all. I asked the person, how do you, what do you do? He's like, no, we make sure they wash them. I was like, washing will take off maybe some flies. Flies happen to be things that come off pretty easily with washing. If you wash it well, you can get thrips don't come off with washing.
They adhere very strongly.
They adhere. You need soap. And then you need to check and make sure that it's not so infested that sometimes you can't even get them all off. And I asked the Rabbi Machsher, I was like, how do you deal with infestation? And he didn't really. He said, we wash them. Make sure everything's washed. And this is a person who is quote unquote in hashkacha. And unfortunately, there are many hashkachas that are doing things with really not understanding what the issues are, not staying up to date on what they have to be doing, particularly infestation, something which is always evolving, always new issues, always things, and you have to keep on top of it. And people say, yeah, but in the olden days, everyone probably ate it and it was fine. So the truth is some things they didn't know. Some things were different, more pesticides were used way back when, which aren't being used so much today because of health and health conscious. So there are new things that are always, and there are certain seasons that are worse than others. You have to know which seasons are better, which seasons are worse, which vegetables in different seasons could be a problem. And if once you open up the world, or you see wow, there's a real issue here.
So like anything else, really, a vegan restaurant needs a reputable hashkacha like any other restaurant.
100%.
But there are other issues besides insect infestation. Sure. Let's say you go into the vegan restaurant, you're not ordering vegetables.
Right. Stay away from the salads.
Stay away from the salads. I want to order some other item that seems innocuous.
Right.
What other problems will I encounter?
So you talk about skip the salad. I just had last week a kamas matzeva I did for a family. They weren't from at all, unfortunately. And right afterwards, they say, going out for dinner, Rabbi, you can come with us. Don't worry about it. Just have a salad. And I'm thinking like salad, thank you very much. Salad's the one thing I'm never going to touch. But in people's minds, not just unfortunately non-frum people, but even frum people, like a salad's always the most innocuous thing. What's wrong with a salad? Right? So Baruch Hashem, there's more awareness about insects, but it's something which I think needs more and more Zahiris, people to really aware what the issues are.
So we're talking about other concerns in vegan restaurants.
There's other concerns.
Besides for vegetables. What would that be?
So someone's skipping the salad, no salad. So probably second biggest issue, which may be even a bigger issue actually, is bishul akum. Everything is prepared and cooked by the restaurant. There's a non-Jew cooking it. Those things are all potential issues of bishul akum. The halacha is any food which is olah shulchan malachim, which can be served to a king's table, has a problem with bishul akum. Now, truth is some things can be in raw, and that's where halacha may differentiate. Nechal chai, but many things that they're serving, you can't eat those vegetables raw, and they're making dishes. Many of the dishes are cooked, can't be eaten raw.
Even though the ingredients are 100% kosher.
100% kosher.
Right.
It's 100% usher to eat that. We call it treif. Right. Now, again, treif is a very generic word, but that's technically treif. And a person can't eat that. And who's thinking about the fact that someone else turned on the fire and a guy cooked it, and it never dawned upon them the fact there may be an issue of bishul akum. And that's something which I think also very not on people's minds, not on the radar.
It's interesting you bring it up because people about not being on the radar. People don't realize in their own home they could have bishul akum, 100%. Right? If they have domestic help 100%. With their kosher items, but the person is cooking it in their house. There are potential problems of bishul akum.
I want to tell you a very
right?
unfortunate story.
Yeah.
I had a fellow called me up and said he has a shaila, he just never really knew about bishul akum. For 10 years, his cleaning person was making the soup for Shabbos. 10 years. Wow. And he said, does that mean I was eating non-kosher? I didn't have the heart to tell him. So I said, let's talk about the utensils. And we had to go through every utensil in his kitchen, the bowls and the spoons and the pots, and we figured certain things. We make it 10 years. And from family who does but they were helped out by the person for Shabbos. And 10 years they made the soup. And there's something which people don't even realize. Someone has help with their kids. Can you make an egg for my kid? That egg is treif. Right. And not only that, the kalim have an issue. Right? There's 2 days of Shulchan Aruch about the kalim, but according to one day in Shulchan Aruch, the kalim itself has to be kashered. Someone can make a disaster to their kitchen from cleaning person being in there cleaning, just helping out, innocuously helping out. And bishul akum, something which is so common. It's on the radar. It's got to be on the radar screen.
Going back to a vegan restaurant, there could be potentially greater problems if the restaurant, let's say, is Jewish owned than if it's non-Jewish owned. We're talking about obviously if there's no hashkacha. Right. But if it's Jewish owned, there are other issues as well, right?
For sure. Jewish owned, they have issues with tefillas kalim. Right. All the kalim have to be toveled. You have hafrashos challah issues. There are many things in there which need hafrashos challah. You have chametz being owned in Pesach issues, which is another issue. And someone might think, my local Israeli is he's a nice guy and he takes care, but he is not aware of all these things, and they've all a whole nother level of issues, particularly when it's owned by a Jew.
Is there anything that someone could buy in a vegan restaurant? Just so that we don't leave people totally hopeless here.
So it's a great question. And it leads to a bigger question of maras ayin in general.
About going into a restaurant that doesn't have hashkacha.
Now, okay. In some ways, the worst restaurants are the ones that seem the best. Why? People think they see restaurants kosher style. It's a kosher style. That's the worst maras ayin is a kosher style restaurant. Why? Because someone sees kosher style. I see a rabbi or someone who looks Jewish, someone who looks religious, he has a yarmulke on, walking into kosher style. Probably that's okay. And a vegan restaurant, so much more so, because someone from walks into a vegan restaurant and people see them, that's probably okay. What could be the issue? They're thinking what the person thought, right? So they may know. I'm very aware of all the different issues in there. But the maras ayin is probably the most serious in the vegan restaurant more than anything else.
Very educational. Any final thoughts on this topic? A takeaway for our viewers, something that they could apply, on a real level.
Yeah. So 2 things I would say. Number one, you asked about what things can you buy in a vegan restaurant. So truth is, I think the maras ayin issue is very serious. But back to the salad or cut up fruit issues. So people sometimes get invited to a restaurant, non-kosher restaurant, and let's assume there's no maras ayin issue. I think that in a classic restaurant where it's very clear, I'm not eating for everyone else, I have a plastic plate, and I just get a cut up fruit, that may seem like it's okay. It's cut up fruit, not even vegetables.
Right.
Cut up fruit in a restaurant also has an issue. You have the issue with the knife and the shamnunis on the knife, so you have to think about that as well. Cut up fruit in a commercial setting, buying it in a supermarket, is much less problematic.
Let's say buying cut up watermelon.
Exactly. It's being done in bulk, and it's being done in mass. And the Shulchan Aruch already says that fruits that are cut in mass have it's bottle, anything which may have been on the knife. So that's a much less of an issue, and that's something which a person certainly can buy in a supermarket, cut up fruit. Obviously, vegetables get back to infestation, but there are vegetables that don't have those issues, and those again can be bought in a setting like that. One other thing I would mention is that you're talking about things without hashgacha, and it's obviously has to be on our radar screen, hashgacha. I want to tell you a story that happened to me personally, which was really an eye-opener for me. I'm involved in Kashrus. I have a shul, deal with shilos all the time. And one of the things that we've been hearing about is like party planners, about make sure they have hashgacha and they're under hashgacha. And I always thought and associated party planners with people who are doing large-scale events, very expensive type of events. That's who use party planners. A few months ago, Baruch Hashem, our daughter got engaged, and we live in Cincinnati, and the vert was in Lakewood, and we needed some help with the vert. So one of my siblings mentioned, there's a woman who can help out, and she can order some things for you. The last thing associated with this woman was a party planner. But essentially, that's what she was. She was a party planner. And without even thinking, we called her, and we said we need some things for the vert, and she took care of it. And afterwards, only after the vert did I think, there were salads there. Do I know where those salads came from? I don't. I really hope they were okay. But to me, it was an incredible awareness that someone who's involved in kashrus like myself, without even realizing, got involved in a very serious thing. And there was things that were made there, out in people's homes potentially, not under hashgacha. And the awareness, unfortunately, is not out there enough. And I'm talking to myself. We need to keep on spreading the message, spreading the word, making sure it's under proper hashgacha, making sure it's being done properly. Hopefully through that we can have only the most kaddish things going into our mouth.
Mitzvah Hashem. We thank you for your time. Okay. Thank you for your insight and your contribution to the field of kashrus.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.